Go to the Boardwalk Honda hotline, bring in Scott Lauber here as the Phillies getting ready. You know, they're taking on a Nationals team, Scott, who seemingly was waving the white flag, but Strasburg and Scherzer would almost say that they've got other plans against this Phillies team the next two nights. The Phillies have been kind of locked into some tough pitching matchups against teams that are seemingly out of it over recent days.
Yeah, no question about it. And look, I understand why sort of the general consensus is that the Nats are waving the white flag. They traded two very good players yesterday in Daniel Murphy and Matt Adams. They're clearly looking forward to 2019 as much as they are looking at 2018 and trying to salvage what little chance they have to win this division. But then you look at the lineup they put out there last night, and 1 through 6 in their batting order, all those guys could probably bat third or fourth on the Phillies team right now. It's still a very scary lineup. You mentioned the two pitchers they have going the next two nights. It's a testament, number one, to the talent that team has, that after a quote-unquote fire sale, they're still able to put that team out there. It's a reminder of how disappointing a season they've had and how much they've underachieved. But, you know, the Phillies have 5 of their next, I think it is 8 games against them, and they better watch out, because the minute you think that team is on to next year, they're going to beat you and they're going to knock you out onto next year. So, you know, I thought a lot about it last night as I was watching the game. I thought a lot about the 2006 Phillies. It's probably a team that not a whole lot of people remember, because that team won 86 games and missed the playoffs, and it feels like just another kind of whatever sort of season that gets lost in history. But if you remember what happened to that team, they made some trades right before the deadline, including Bobby Abreu. They were on to next year, and then they played great the last 2 months of the season and almost made the playoffs. So these sort of sales that teams have don't always have that intended effect, and the Nats are certainly talented enough. I'm not saying they're going to make the playoffs, but like I said, they could make life pretty miserable on the Phillies the next 8 days, and I know they have games left with the Braves. So they could still have an impact on who wins this division, and you better not take them lightly, or you do so at your own peril.
Yeah, they play them 8 more times. The Phillies will play the Braves 7 times. I mean, so 15 of the remaining 37 games are against the team directly behind them and directly in front of them. Do you think that those 15 games will tell the story?
Well, I certainly think that the 7 of the last 11 against the Braves, 7 of the last 11 games of the season are all against the Braves. I certainly think that those games, and I'm not saying anything like you know, groundbreaking here. I think it's going to come probably down to that last couple of weekends of the season and all those games against the Braves. Now, you know, having said that, you know, the Phillies need to be careful here. You know, as I said, you know, 5 games in the next week and a half against Washington, with a series in the middle in Toronto. That's a team you should beat, but we all know that when you start talking about teams they should beat, whether it's, you know, the Marlins, the Reds, the Padres, last weekend the Mets, the Phillies don't really do well in those, you know, games against quote-unquote teams they should beat. So, you know, I think that, you know, the schedule, and then they come back home and it's Washington and the Cubs. So, yeah, I think those games against the Braves, especially at the end of the season, are going to mean something, but they got to be careful here, because the schedule is sneaky tough for the next couple of weeks before they get to all those games against the Marlins and the Mets, where, you know, again, they should clean up on those teams, should make some hay there.
Yeah.
Not that that's worked out well for them thus far.
Well, right. I mean, last night's a game that a good team probably wins. And I think you look at this team and say, hey, have they overachieved? Are they even a good team? I'm not sure how to characterize this team, but you're up 4-1 in the 6th and you lose. I think that kind of is a microcosm of who this team is. Kind of a little ahead of schedule, but maybe not as good as their record suggests they are. I mean, in a league that's a little watered down.
Yeah, I mean, how many games in the last just, you know, month alone have we said, well, that's a game a good team should win? You know, the 2 games they lost against the Padres, against rookie starters, well, a good team should win those games. Certainly last night, you're up 4-1 in the 6th inning, win that game, they lose 10-4. So there have been a lot of these games. You could sort of sit here right now, look at the schedule, and make a pretty long list of games that a good team should win. So what's the conclusion that we're to draw from that? I think you're probably right that, you know, we thought all along that they seemed to be ahead of schedule, and maybe it's sort of coming to roost now. But like it or not, you get through the trade deadline in first place, and expectations go up for you. So
Sure.
I don't think Phillies fans are going to take a whole lot of solace in saying, well, look at how improved they are over last year. If they fall short of the playoffs, they're going to look at the year overall as a disappointment, and then maybe on in the offseason say, well, at least they were relevant for the majority of the season, which has not been the case here for quite a while. So, it's sort of two sides to the coin, two different ways to look at it. But I think as we sit here now, getting close to the end of August, and they've been in contention for this long, you'd certainly say, well, if they don't come through this and make the playoffs, it's got to be viewed as a disappointing year.
Scott Lauber is with us here, covers the Philly.com. Hey, look, Herrera, this is a guy that was an all-star a couple of years ago. They gave him a contract. He was maybe all-star worthy at the time this year, and he has fallen all the way to the 8th spot in the order, and some are calling for him to be removed from the lineup. How do you see his role in that center field situation playing out over the last 37?
Well, I think it's going to be a test of Gabe Kapler. Roman Quinn's in there tonight, and we'll see what Kapler's explanation is for why he went that way tonight. Whether it's kind of a one-time thing, giving Odubel a rest, or whether this is a shift, perhaps, in the amount of playing time that Herrera and Quinn are going to get in center field. He was, you could say, for the first month and a half of the season, he was their best hitter. He was their 3-hole hitter for the majority of the season. But you look at his numbers since Memorial Day even, and I think he's hitting like 223 with like a 658 OPS, something like that. Those numbers are not good, and that's a pretty large sample size if you're going all the way back to Memorial Day. So, we've known for some time that Herrera is a streaky hitter. When he's on a hot streak, watch out. When he's on a cold streak, he can kill you. He's killed them now for a little while, and I think, Quinn comes up. He's a guy who can bring some energy. He brings some speed. He brings good defense. Maybe he's somebody who can make some things happen. And I think if I'm the guy making out the lineup, you've got to take a look at it. Now, we'll see how loyal Kapler is overall to a veteran guy, a guy who's helped them get to where they're at. The fact of the matter is, it seems like right now they're probably a better team, or at least have a better chance at scoring some runs the way Quinn is swinging the bat versus the way Herrera is swinging it.
Yeah, and I know last night Quinn was up in a big spot, didn't get it done. Hoskins up in a big spot, he didn't get it done. And overall, I talked about this before you came on, Scott. If Cabrera, who they just got, is essentially got the best numbers and been your most consistent player, when I was watching him the other day and I see Asdrubal Cabrera is up in the 3-hole, I'm thinking, this team's not all that good. If Cabrera is your best offensive weapon, doesn't that tell the story of who you are?
Yeah, no doubt. And, I think that maybe, if they continue to struggle, that sort of becomes the narrative down the stretch, is that, boy, did they overachieve for 4 months of the season. And they are more or less who we thought they were, which is a team that was better than they were a year ago, but still not there yet, still had not arrived. And one of the things I look at is the youth of the team. We've talked about this so much throughout the course of the season, that they have the youngest roster in Major League Baseball. And one thing that happens when you have a roster that young and you have so many players who are going through a pennant race for the first time is, sometimes, it's a learning process. And I've seen young players who turned out to be really good players over the years, who really sort of struggle in their first exposure to the bright lights and a pennant race. And you've got to sort of learn how to finish, for lack of a better way to say it. Learn how to close. Learn how to win. And maybe that's a little bit of what's going on here, too. Maybe the lights are starting to get a little bright for some of these guys. Maybe it's like, oh, my gosh, look at where we are. We're in first place, or today they're 2 games out, but they haven't been – I think 2 games out is the most they've been in a little while. Mm-hmm. They were in first place by themselves for a month. And now maybe it's getting to the end of August, and it's almost Labor Day, and they're starting to get a little of that, oh, my God, look at what we've done. And they've got sort of that deer in the headlights look sometimes, I think, that you've seen from them the past few weeks. And maybe that's part of all of this whole entire process of becoming contenders again, is you have to learn how to contend. And I don't know if they have enough guys up and down their roster, this youngest roster in the game, who truly know how to win yet. And that's okay. That's part of how you develop as a major league player. And they've just got a lot of guys right now who are still developing as major league players.
Scott, what would you surmise? 41-22 at home. No other team has 39 wins. I mean, so they're a couple of games better than the best home team, but 27-35 on the road. What is it about their style of play that has the discrepancy so great home and away splits? Because of the 37 games left, 19 of them are going to be on the road here.
Yeah, it's a great question. I don't know. I mean, maybe they are, and I'm just sort of taking a shot here, but, you know, we've known for some time now. I mean, the reputation's there, what kind of a ballpark Citizens Bank Park is, and when you have power and you're able to hit home runs, it's a very friendly ballpark for you. The Phillies seem to do well when they can hit the ball out of the ballpark because it's awfully difficult they find it awfully difficult, I think, to manufacture runs sometimes, string together 3 or 4 hits in a row. You don't see them do that a whole lot. And so certainly, you know, when you take aim at left field and you're Rhys Hoskins, you're going to have success there. And maybe it's just the ballpark lends itself to the style of offense a little bit. There's so much swing and miss in their lineup, but there's also a decent amount of power as well, whether it's Hoskins or Franco. Even Alfaro has a ton of power from the bottom part of the order, and maybe playing at home enables them to sort of flex their muscle a little bit and hit some more home runs. I haven't looked to see if their home run rate at home is appreciably greater than it is on the road, but for whatever reason, they do look just incredibly they're incredibly more comfortable in Citizens Bank Park. They seem to have pitched pretty much everywhere. I mean, the rotation's been on quite a roll lately and has kept them in games really all season long, whether they're home or on the road. It just seems as though at home they score more runs, and maybe they're just a little bit more geared toward their home ballpark. Nothing wrong with that either. As far as I'm concerned, you should build a team that plays well at home because that's where you play half your games. But they've got to find a way to get it done on the road because, as you said, there are still a lot of road games left, 19 of the 37. So it's slightly more than half, one more than half, and they're going to have to figure out how to win on the road because at the rate they're going, it's just not good enough.
All right, Scott, are you at this stage of the season labeling these games must-win situations for the Phillies?
I think so. Look, I'll say this. They're must-win series from here on out. They haven't won, you go back. They lost the series to the Mets. They split that little 2-game series against the Red Sox. They lost the series to the Padres. They lost the series to the Diamondbacks. So they're going on 5 series now.
Yeah.
I mean, if they don't win tonight or tomorrow, it's a 5-series winless streak.
Yeah.
You got to start winning series. That is a must. That is an absolute must. You take 2 out of 3 in every series you play from here on out, you're going to make the playoffs.
Well, see, and that I would agree with. I would agree with that sentiment that you got to start, getting 2 out of 3, 4 out of 5, 7 out of 10. You got to start playing more consistent baseball. But these night to night, if they lose last night, as long as they take 2 out of 3 here, you feel a lot better. That loss last night doesn't sting as much.
Right, and if you look at the series, if you isolate a series, that's why last night's loss hurts so much. Number one, you had a 4-1 lead in the 6th inning, and you lost 10-4. That's a bad loss. Number two, you have Strasburg and Scherzer coming up in the next 2 games. Now you're thinking, oh no. I mean, you got to beat both of those guys to win the series. So that's a really damaging loss last night. So yeah, there are must-win games, but really there are must-win series. Yeah. And if they don't win series, you're going to look back at some of these losses and say, well, that's where it got away.
Okay, Scott Lauber covers the Philadelphia Phillies. They're 2 back. They will play the Washington Nationals tonight. And, again, it's Strasburg tonight, Scherzer tomorrow. So 2 tough ones. Got to figure out a way to scratch and claw your way. And tomorrow, Nola for Philadelphia. So you don't want to waste a Nola start, even though he's up against Scherzer. There might be one guy in the National League better than him right now, or maybe 2. I mean, that DeGrom game he threw the other night was outstanding. But when you got Nola going and you don't win those games, that's frustrating as well. So we'll see what happens. Scott, it's always a pleasure. We appreciate it, man.
Anytime, guys.